Parliament has reached its winter break, so where does everyone stand? Well, Labor's recovered some ground, One Nation's rise has been checked, and the coalition is still falling. The Liberals' Dan Tehan joins us this morning. I'm David Spears. Welcome to Insiders. Prime Minister begins a diplomatic push through the Pacific this week. His confidence is up after a pivotal budget session of Parliament. Labor says it's untroubled by the dip in Sydney and Melbourne house prices, but it will be nervous if this turns into something worse for the property market. Not everything's gone the government's way. Its proposed reforms to gambling ads don't have a clear path through Parliament and are now off to an inquiry. Its plan for tougher enforcement of the social media age ban is also facing hurdles. But the opposition can't seem to capitalise on any of it. The coalition has sunk further in the polls, prompting more soul-searching and leadership chatter.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Okay, we good to go?
Let's do it.
Hang on.
And knock yourself out.
Stop.
Auction clearance rates have fallen to the lowest level since the depths of COVID.
We are expecting falls of 120 grand in Sydney, more than 80 grand in Melbourne.
Interest rates are playing a role, broader economic conditions are playing a role as well.
And finally, the investor side hit in the federal budget as well.
Changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax have spooked investors.
I don't think investors in housing typically overreact to volatility from week to week or from month to month.
Was it your intention to crash the housing market?
Of course not, and that's not what we're seeing.
Well, Jim Chalmers seems to want to crash the housing economy. I mean, this is very worrying.
The Treasury assumption in the budget papers is that house prices will continue to grow, but a bit more slowly. And there'll still be house price growth, but house prices will grow a bit more slowly.
Yeah, but in reality, they're not growing, just slower. They're falling.
The CBA is forecasting house prices to be flat for the year. NAB's predicting a drop. Domain thinks the drop could be quite big, up to 8%.
There is a bit of volatility in house prices. There is a bit of volatility in auction clearance rates. These are long-term investments.
The main thing driving movements in the market is interest rates. The effect of the government's housing tax changes are modest.
Does the minister know
How many first home buyers now owe
more money than their home is worth?
Someone here has to stand up for first home buyers, and that's exactly what Labor did.
What about the 10 million people that own homes in Australia?
Is the message just to suck it up?
Are you saying that homeowners should just be prepared to take a hit for the good of the country?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I stand by the Treasury estimates, and we stand by the reform that is about giving young people a fair crack.
There'll be battlers out there wanting to sell their home for a profit.
Well, there's many ways to sell a home, but what we want to see is homes being sold at rates that people can afford.
How many first home buyers have fallen into negative equity since the budget?
How many first home buyers will be pushed into negative equity because of Labor's deliberate correction?
The reduction in investor demand is expected to lead to a small and temporary slowing of house price growth.
I'm not sure what you're doing, but resume your seat.
There's a very good chance that you'll be in the red. You'll be negative equity. That means you've done your dough.
Our changes in the budget that we announced less than 2 months ago are about making the housing market fairer for everyone, Mr. Speaker.
Well, we are joined this week by Nikki Savva, columnist with the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, Daniel James, the host of the 7am podcast, and Samantha Maiden, political editor at news.com.au. Very good morning to all of you. Nikki, we'll get to the opposition. Let's start with the government, though. They broke promises in this budget, took some risks, but how do they look at the end of this budget session now into the winter break?
All things considered, not too bad, really. Look, obviously they have copped a lot of flack over broken promises, but I think one thing that they probably will rely on, that people won't forget the broken promises, but they might forgive. And the fact that they were able to get their tax changes through was quite an achievement. Obviously a couple of glitches right at the end with gambling and social media, but you got to think that they're now in much better shape than they were at the start of the session.
A lot of focus in this final week of Parliament on the house prices. We saw the opposition, hammering the government, suggesting crashing the market and so on. There has been a dip in Sydney, Melbourne and Canberra, house prices, not in some of the other cities. But I want to show you this for a bit of context. There's a look back since 2010, so the last 15, 16 years of house price growth in Sydney, Melbourne and nationally. And what you can see there are some dips along the way, bigger than the dip that we're currently in so far, but the steady growth. I mean, Sydney's market up, about nearly 150%, Melbourne nearly 100%, the national market over 100%. So Daniel, I guess, context is important here. We'll see whether this turns into a bigger dip, and I suppose the government would be worried then. But right now it's not. Is it right to be fairly untroubled by this?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've forgotten when it comes to the housing market is that markets are volatile and that we're actually used to a housing market that has that exponential growth, and there has been dips, and this is a small dip. I think it's just a matter of sort of reminding people that we are in a market-driven economy, and that housing prices can fluctuate as well. The challenge for the government is that many voters and many people in the market will now see the government's hand within that market through the changes it's just introduced. That's
the good point, isn't it? The previous dips may not have been seen as the government's fault directly. Now there's some blame going to be attached, whatever happens. But it's been such a safe bet for everyone for so long, the housing market, hasn't it, Sam? Is the government right to be confident that this won't turn into a bad dip, that it's going to keep growing eventually?
Well, I think the political danger point for the government is all around really the intersection of that 5% deposit scheme. So they've shoved people, in some cases on modest incomes into this scheme. I totally understand why they're doing it. These people want to get into the market, but some of those are going to be in negative equity. Now, the government is right to say that...
It would take a 5% dip, though, wouldn't it, to be in...
I think they'll absolutely get a 5% dip in some areas. You've got to remember those national figures when they talk about 2%. If you look at those totality figures, housing prices dipped by 1% in
Sydney.
In Sydney in that period.
You reckon
that they were
right down to 5?
Oh, I think that it will depend on where you are, but I think that there will absolutely be areas where it could be more than 5%, and in some cases you're already seeing that. So that's not it's still the case that it's a long-term investment. The opposition, I think, needs to be wary of looking like they're cheering on a collapse in house prices. But I think that there are dangers for the government. But equally, just in terms of those figures you put up as well, there's places in Perth where prices went up, I think, like 70% or something in a year or two, right? So there's lots of room for there to be a bit of an adjustment. But there are dangers if the adjustment is seen as too big.
Let's turn to the opposition. And Sam, I'll start with you on this one. How low can those polls go?
Look, I don't know if they can go much lower than they are right now. I think it's interesting to reflect on the fact that Susan Lee was doing not well, but better than this. And they took her out the back and sent her to the knackery. I think that, there's something else I could say, but it'd be worse. But I think that there's some people who argue that there is work going underneath the surface of the pond, that there's a lot of policy work going on that we wouldn't necessarily see yet.
There's actually praise for Angus Taylor internally for how that policy development's going.
Who say that he's doing things that Susan Lee and Peter Dutton didn't in that space. Whether or not he's around to see those flowers bloom.
Fruition. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, Daniel, what's your sense of it and how they're sort of grappling with the moment that they're in?
17% is pretty low, but as Bob Dylan's saying, when you think you've lost everything, you can find out you can always lose a little more. We seem to be in 2026 in a situation where anything could happen. You can't write anything off. But to come through this sitting of Parliament where the government broke a promise, explain why they broke that promise, but have the opposition unable to capitalise on that and actually go backwards is
it's a worry.
Pretty dire.
Yeah, it's a worry. Now, Nikki, you wrote in your piece during the week about Andrew Hastie in particular. You said that he feels abandoned by the Liberal... If he feels abandoned by the Liberal Party in this fight, he will abandon them. You're talking about the fight with One Nation, where he's clearly wanting to take a much tougher approach to One Nation. He has since said that he's going to... he plans to recontest Canning for the Liberals, but there was this curious comment that he made to Andrew Bolt on Sky News.
Those who are suggesting that somehow we should just
hand over the keys to One Nation or that we would enter into a formal coalition with One Nation, I think that it's wrong. And I'm not sure I'd be welcome in such a party anyhow.
Nikki, what's going on there?
Well, first of all, can I say that I'm sticking 100% by what I wrote on Thursday. And Andrew Hastie is or should be the future of the Liberal Party. And I think what he wants to make absolutely clear to people is the possible consequences of what would happen if the Liberals did do a deal with One Nation and what the stakes are. And I think that is indicated by that quote.
Yeah, so I think the idea of a preference deal in certain seats might not be a deal breaker for him, but this talk of a coalition being in government together, clearly that's a problem.
That is clearly a problem, and you only have to look at what is happening at the moment inside the Liberal Party and outside it about One Nation. The federal president, allegedly, of the Liberal Party has said...
Pretty sure he is the president.
I'll expand on that in a moment. Has said he is prepared to do deals with One Nation. He says he's prepared to work constructively with anybody who wants to get rid of Labor. He gave a speech in London last week on mass migration that could have been delivered by Pauline Hanson.
We'll just pause there because we've got a bit of what that of Tony Abbott, that speech and the comments that he made about Anglo-Celtic culture.
For those with a grudge against their own country, it's sustained mass migration, especially from places with quite different cultures. That's the surest and swiftest way to change and punish somewhere that's irredeemably tainted by unforgivable sin, in order to dilute and eventually to extinguish the Anglo-Celtic core culture and the Judeo-Christian foundational ethos.
Dilute or extinguish the Anglo-Celtic culture, Nikki?
Well, look, this was a very strange speech from someone who is president of a party that began the dismantling of the White Australia policy and did preside for decades over mass migration to Australia. Now, I thought that was a very extreme speech, and like I say, could have been delivered by One Nation. So maybe he should be president of One Nation. Who knows? Also, along with that, though, there are other things happening at the moment. I've heard that there are Liberals in Victoria who are actively courting people to run for One Nation in vulnerable Liberal seats in order to maximise the Conservative vote because they fear what might happen with either the Teals or with Labor. So there's all this other stuff going on privately, but also publicly. People are actively talking about aligning with One Nation.
Sam?
I was just going to jump in on Andrew Hastie. I mean, I spoke to Andrew Hastie during the week, as I'm sure that Nikki would have as well. And look, he's definitely not saying that he's leaving the party. He is definitely contesting the next election. He's not opposed necessarily to preference deals. He's just laying out a marker that he wouldn't feel comfortable being in a Liberal Party that was basically merging, as it were. And so it's really, I think, more of a response to that sort of Tony Passon idea that they would completely merge. Like, I think that he's... in a good spot, and I think that on balance, that was a very good leadership tussle to lose. I think that was really positive for Andrew Hastie. He's given a lot more time now to get into that role as Deputy Manager of Business, learn all those skills, and he's really in the box seat if they decide to make a leadership change closer to the election.
Nor does he think he'd be the only one in some sort of coalition with One Nation, the only one in the Liberals who'd be looking to go somewhere else. What did you think of that Tony Abbott speech, Sam?
Well, I thought it was Tony Abbott doing the things that Tony Abbott does. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't think there's anything terribly surprising about what he had to say.
But he's the president of the Liberal Party. He's out there putting forward arguments that are clearly...
The mother country is where Tony goes to speak his mind. And what I heard in that speech was the language of white nationalism. It was the language of the Great Replacement theory.
White nationalism?
And if no, I do not think that's an overstatement. They're diluting, Celtic Anglo culture, mass immigration. It is something that would sit well with reform, it would sit well with One Nation, but at the moment it's sitting within the Liberal Party, and that's something that it's going to have to decide, because it can't play on the same emotional terrain as One Nation, because they'll get done every time.
I mean, is he arguably saying, though, just on that point, that those who want mass migration are doing this to atone for what they see as the past sins of the country because they want to dilute Anglo-Celtic culture? Is that what he's trying to say there?
If he's saying that, then it's very clumsily.
When you look at what these people are saying, it seems to me that they just cannot cope with the Australia of today. And some of them hate what Australia has become and think that somehow they can take it back to what it was.
Well, time now to talk to the Shadow Energy Minister and Manager of Opposition Business, Dan Tehan, whose colleagues have very different views on what the Liberal Party needs to do.
I think it's time for the Liberal Party to rebrand itself. Our policies need to resonate with the Australia of today and the future. So I think it'd be a really good time for us to revisit our values, what we stand for, and the way we project ourselves to Australians.
We had a Shadow Minister earlier today speak about abandoning the Liberal Party name.
We've got 82 years of political capital. The people know who the Liberals are. Yes, we're at a low, but I would be very hesitant about walking away from the Liberal Party as a brand.
We have a Liberal Party that isn't Liberal, a National Party that isn't national, and a One Nation Party that wants to divide the nation.
Dan Tehan, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, David.
So the polls aren't getting any better for the Liberal Party. Do you just keep doing what you're doing, or does something need to change?
No, we've got to make sure that we have a game plan. We've got to make sure that we've got a strategy, and we've got to stick to it. And that's what Angus Taylor has set up. He's given us the game plan in his budget in reply speech. He's basically outlined that we are a party of lower taxes. We're a party that wants to build more houses. We're a party that wants to put downward pressure on electricity. We're a party that wants to improve living standards in this country, because we've seen the biggest fall in living standards anywhere in the developed world. That's got to be the focus. Now, we've got to go out and sell that, as well as rebrand the Labor Party, because we've got a Prime Minister that lies to the Australian people. He did it before 2022 when he said energy prices would fall by $275. He did it before 2025 when he said he wouldn't change housing taxes, investment taxes, taxes on small business. And we've got to get out and show that he cannot be trusted. And I think that breach with the Australian people that was committed in this year's budget, that's going to have a very, very long tail. So if we can stick to our strategy and keep rebranding the Labor Party, then I think we can put a very coherent case to the Australian people. Right.
So it sounds like your answer is to put more focus on Labor rather than yourselves. I understand that, but there is a lot
David, no, that's not what I said, because I started very clearly by saying we've got to have our strategy and we've got to have our plan. And Angus Taylor laid that out, the start of that, in the budget and reply speech. And you have to admit that there has been, on very rare occasions, that an opposition leader in their first speech has laid out so much policy detail, and there's more to come on that.
However, many of your colleagues are at odds over what to do about the fact that One Nation is just killing you guys in the polls. What do you think? Would you be part of a coalition government with One Nation?
Well, David, what I want to be part of is a Liberal Party and a National Party that in coalition runs this country again. Because
I'm sure that's the case, but the question is, would you be part of a coalition with One Nation, or is that a red line for you?
Well, it's not even being talked about. I mean,
you can answer the question, surely. Would you be part of it or not?
I can. I can say I'm very happy being a coalition of the Liberal Party and the National Party. That's all we're focused on.
Is that a no, that you would not be part of a coalition with One Nation?
Well,
or I mean...
Well, it's a no. We are a coalition, Liberal Party, National Party, and it's not even being talked about.
And it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. Even if the election produces all these One Nation MPs, you would not be part of a coalition.
Well, I mean, we've got to focus on what we're doing. I mean, will the Labor Party be part of a coalition with the Greens?
That's a question for them. I'm asking you.
That's a question for them.
I'm asking you, Dan Tehan, as a Liberal.
Yes.
Another time, one more time.
Yeah.
Would you be part of a coalition with One Nation?
Well, what I've said, David, is I want to be part of a coalition with the Liberal Party and the National Party. We're not. Listen to me. We're not entertaining. We're not discussing. We're not thinking about being part of a coalition with One Nation. Right?
Okay, but Andrew Hastie is clear he would not be part of a coalition with One Nation.
Yeah, yes. He's a very, very strong Liberal and he wants us to govern with the National Party. And so what I'm saying is, no, we do not want to be part of a coalition with One Nation.
Okay,
we want to be part of a coalition with the Liberal Party and the National Party, which does the right thing by this country, doesn't lie to people before elections and then do the complete opposite afterwards, and has an agenda that will improve living standards in this nation going ahead.
What did you think of that Tony Abbott speech in London talking about diluting and eventually extinguishing Anglo-Celtic culture through mass migration?
Well, to be honest with you, the first time I'd heard about it was when you mentioned it to me this morning when you said you wanted to discuss it today. Two things to say on this. It's the coalition party room that sets the migration policies of this nation going forward. And that's something that Tony Abbott respects and he respected when he was a member of the Liberal National Party, that it's the coalition party room that sets the migration policy. And the second thing is that Angus Taylor, in his budget in reply speech, set the foundations of where we want to go, and in particular making sure that we have our migration levels in line with the amount of houses that are built in this nation, so that we can rebalance our migration policy, we can rebalance to make sure that we're looking after Australians first when it comes to our migration policy, and that's what we want to do.
So is what you're saying that the Liberal Party president does not speak for the Liberal Party on migration?
No, it is. So, I mean, we set the policy, and that's always been the case. Now, you know, there are people have a lot of views about this, but it is the party room, which always has and always will, sets the policy agenda, and that's what we will continue to do.
And should we interpret that you disagree with what he said? Andrew Bragg has, your colleague, do you?
Well, look, I haven't read the full speech. I saw a little clip of it of what you said there. I don't know the full context of it. But I think what he was trying to say, what I heard, that little bit that I heard, is that what we do with our nation and what we do with migration has to be underpinned by the values which have worked for us so well. And that's what we want to continue to focus on. So, you know, we're a country of diverse backgrounds, many cultures, but we've got to make sure that we do not lose those values that have made us such a great nation.
We're a great multicultural country. You have argued in the past, a couple of years ago, Dan Tehan, you said Australia is truly one of the best multicultural nations in the world. Australia proudly celebrates its multiculturalism. Do you still support multiculturalism?
Absolutely. You know, multiculturalism has worked for this nation when it's done underpinned by incredibly strong values, and we don't want to lose those. And if we lose those, then there will be pressure that comes on multiculturalism. So we've got to make sure that those values that are so important to us, we keep those: freedom, democracy, liberty, the things that have made us such a great nation, and it brings people together. Those values unite Australians together. That's what we've got to keep focusing on.
On house prices, a big focus for the Coalition over the past week in Parliament. You've previously argued house prices are too high. A couple of years ago you said prices were ridiculous, beyond the reach of Australians across the board. Why are you upset to see those prices now come off?
Because the question is around the question is around housing affordability, and what the government is doing is not making housing affordable in this country. Real wages continue to go down under this government. Interest rates continue to go up, 15 interest rate rises. The number of houses being built, the budget has shown quite clearly that there's going to be a dip initially in the number of houses that are built. Now, how does that help housing affordability?
But specifically on house prices, how can you criticise the government for having house prices be too high and then also criticise them when house prices fall?
Well, because it's all about, as I've said, housing affordability. It's about people's ability to be able to afford to buy that house. And what we're seeing under this government, it's becoming further and further out of reach, because even though you're seeing a dip in housing prices, you're also seeing a dip in real wages. You're seeing 15 increases in interest rates. So how can that help people to be able to get into a home?
And so you support higher wages, is that right?
So, of course, not only that, David, what I'm saying is if you have a look at what the government has done in this budget, first home buyers, and we saw Aussie Home Loans come out and say this, first home buyers are now not entering the market at the level that they were before the budget. Now, and that's even though the Prime Minister has been spruiking and saying that they are. The first data we've got on this shows even first home buyers aren't going into the market like they were.
Would you completely restore property tax breaks for all investors?
Well, what we've said is that we will get rid of these toxic taxes that the Labor Party introduced in this budget.
But restore negative gearing for all?
So we've said that we will restore all the changes that were made in this budget. We've been very clear about that.
What would that do to house prices?
What would that do to house prices? Well, it would give people the confidence to reinvest in the housing market again. It would see more homes being built, and it would enable people with that investment, with more homes, it would enable first home buyers and others to be able to get into the market.
Let's turn to your portfolio, energy and emissions reduction. You've crunched the numbers to show how much household bills have risen under Labor. Have you come up with a plan yet to produce lower power prices?
Yes, well, as you know, we've said that energy abundance will absolutely underpin everything that we do. So we will look to bring all sources of energy into the market, including we want to make sure that a part of that is nuclear energy. And, you know, you'll see that we're going to have next week the Prime Minister of India will be out here and he will be seeking more uranium from us. And the Prime Minister is going to be heralding how it's going to be a great deal that we'll be sending more uranium to India so they can have a civil nuclear industry that continues to grow. Meanwhile, we won't even allow it to be considered here. We want to get rid of net zero. We want to get rid of the safeguard mechanism. We want to make sure we broaden what happens with the capacity investment scheme, which is solely focused on wind, solar in this country. And we want to make sure that there's proper transparency in the energy market. So, for instance, the CSIRO, with their model that underpins what AEMO does, we want to make sure there's transparency around that. We want to make sure there's transparency when it comes to the capacity investment scheme, so we know how much money the government is spending when it comes to trying to promote its renewable. We want to have a look at what's happening with poles and wires in this country, because they are driving the prices of electricity bills up further. So all those things will be part of a suite of policies that we will announce. And of course, we've already announced some of them.
Coming back to the question, though, it's about how you actually get prices to come down. Nuclear power is, we know, one of the most expensive forms of power generation. What would that do to power bills?
Well, obviously, with a suite of energy abundance. So we're going to continue to sweat our coal assets, and we've seen the Queensland state government do that.
Sorry, the question is, would nuclear be any cheaper or would it be more expensive?
Well, if you have a look what's happening with the development of small modular reactors, micro reactors, in 10 years' time, absolutely they might be able to drive downward pressure on prices.
They might be able to in 10 years' time.
Yes, and in the meantime,
long time to wait.
No, but I'm not saying that, David, because you'll also see what I'm saying also is we're going to put more, make sure we sweat the coal assets longer, like we're doing in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland already. No, David,
they're
let
pretty
me
expensive
finish.
too, aren't they? I mean, AEMO, the market operator, makes it clear that more wind, solar and battery capacity in the system reduces reliance on higher cost coal and gas.
Yeah. So you know how AEMO does this modelling. It's based on the government's objective. So their 82% renewable objective. So that's how they base their modelling. This goes to this whole point of transparency, David. Why won't we get proper transparency about what would be the lowest cost way to do this, putting aside those objectives of getting 82% renewable into the market?
Do you want any new coal-fired power stations built?
Well, we've said we'll be completely technology agnostic about it. So we want to get much more gas into the system. If people want to invest into coal, whether it be existing coal or, for instance, in Victoria, there's proposals for coal to liquids using the brown coal that we've got there, and that would be low emissions technology.
But new coal-fired power stations included in that?
Well, if there is a want from the private sector to invest in that, then there is no reason why we shouldn't do that. Because, David, and let me finish here, because it's a very important point. The new technology drives down emissions compared to the existing technology.
It's pretty expensive, though, the new technology for coal, isn't it?
Well, once again, you know, with all the developments which are taking place across the world to try and pursue energy abundance, this technology, the prices of it could come down. And what we're seeing is when it comes to the poles and wires, which you have to put in place to connect the renewables, it adds significantly to the cost. And that isn't considered in this holistic approach, which has said that that's why wind and solar is being,
to be fair,
cheaper.
I think AEMO does include transmission costs. But just a final question, do you want to slow down the rollout of renewables, batteries?
Well, what we want, first of all, is we want renewables in the right place. So we don't want this policy where you just literally walk over landholders to pursue this ideology. And we want to leave it to the market. We've said we will be absolutely technology agnostic when it comes to what's put in place, although we do want to make sure that renewables are in the right place. And you will see there's even the Greens former party members and leaders out saying that literally the environment is being steamrolled in this pursuit of rolling renewables out.
Dan Tehan, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, David.
All right, well, coming up, how does the government plan to limit gambling advertising, and why are critics lining up on the left and the right? First, let's get back to our panel. Nikki Saba from The Age and Sydney Morning Herald, Daniel James from the 7am podcast, and Samantha Maiden from news.com.au. Just a couple of things to pick up from that. Nikki, the position on whether he'd be comfortable in a coalition with One Nation at the start of the interview there, he clearly doesn't want that to happen, but is Dan Tehan being clear enough about whether that is a red line?
Took him a long time, I think, to get to that point, which shows what a difficult issue it is inside the coalition. When you're travelling at 17% of the primary vote and you actually got 12% primary vote in Farrer, what are your options after the next election?
And is it surprising that Dan Tehan says Tony Abbott basically doesn't speak for the party, parliamentary party positions? He's drawing a line there.
Yeah, he was very clear to distance himself from those remarks. He says he hasn't heard fully, reminding us that it is the party room and the shadow cabinet that sets policy. So I think that was a pretty clear sort of indication from him that, you know, while Tony is the president, it is the party that sets the policy. And I think that's a line they're going to have to draw more clearly as time goes on, because Tony is not going to quiet down anytime soon.
That's the difficulty, isn't it, for them? Having a former Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers do tend to offer their views on various things, and as party president, they're going to have to keep making that point that what Tony says doesn't necessarily mean what the position is.
Well, I think the problem they've got is that they just need more interesting people on the front bench. And then we wouldn't
More
pay so
interesting
much
than
attention to Tony.
Maybe that's it. All right, well, let's turn to gambling advertising. And the government's plan is facing criticism from all sides for not going far enough.
Australians are the biggest gambling losers in the world.
But I really don't know how players and codes sleep at night knowing that they are essentially fleecing their supporters.
The government is acting to reduce children's exposure to gambling ads.
With Multi-Express. We have a Prime Minister who is tragically captured by vested interests.
This is good reform. This is a major step forward, and the Parliament should vote for it. If they don't, then you do have the option of the status quo, rather than by...
No.
I lost control. I was a bit embarrassed about losing control, but this is personal for me. And we do the worst job in the world of protecting our citizens.
Why is the government determined to run a protection racket for the gambling companies? Is it because the government is gutless? Even worse than that, is it because the government has no humanity?
Every delay to this, be it Senate inquiry, be it any other shenanigans, we put at risk the 1 January implementation.
Look, I think that's unfortunately a really pathetic response from the Minister.
The Coalition is very serious about combating the terrible harm caused to so many Australian families by gambling addiction.
Angus Taylor talks a big game. Come on, big man, show us how strong you are. Let's actually work to fix this. Let's actually work to get this done.
So what has the government put forward? Well, there are proposed tougher rules for gambling ads on radio, on player uniforms and at stadiums, but most of the contention is around how we watch sport at home. For traditional broadcast TV, the government's proposing a cap of 3 gambling ads an hour from 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m, and then no limit into the evening, except during a live match when no ads will be allowed. For streaming platforms, including SBS On Demand or KO, viewers would need to register their age. If they're over 18, gambling ads can be shown day and night, as well as during halftime and other breaks in play. But the platforms must offer an opt-out, which very few have so far taken up. In fact, I think the numbers are 0.12% have opted out from SBS On Demand, so not many. Sam, what do you think? Will these changes make a big difference to the number of gambling ads we see?
I think that they will make a change, and I think that the interesting thing is that I suspect that these reforms will ultimately pass the Parliament. So I think that they will offer some more concessions, possibly around the advertising, timing and so on. But I think that there is obviously a lot of political will to get something done. And so the Coalition can extract some more concessions. It's just a matter of them settling on what they want. But behind the scenes, they're apparently telling people in the industry that they will pass it eventually, but they have to, get something extra.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. We saw there Simon Kennedy, a Liberal MP, a number of other Liberals as well, have been quite vocal, sharing some heartbreaking stories about gambling addiction and how it's ruined lives. But you think ultimately Angus Taylor and the Coalition will decide to back this?
Yeah, it's hard to see them doing nothing. I mean, it's interesting that in New South Wales, Chris Minns, there's a story in the paper today about him being pushed further on poker machines. I think within the government, Anthony Albanese has such sort of close cultural, dare I say, religious links to the NRL. He obviously has a view on how far is too far. But, they have gone further in some respects than the previous time that they had a crack at this and it all went to pieces.
Yeah, he does talk about the rugby league clubs and junior footy as well, that they will rely on this revenue. The TV networks as well, Channel 10 is under all sorts of pressure. He doesn't want to get blamed if it falls over because of a lack of revenue. But is that a fair enough reason not to go further?
I think the Prime Minister was being slightly disingenuous when he was worried about the revenue in the game at all levels. I mean, we just had the NRL negotiate a deal with Channel 9 for $5.1 billion for their television rights. AFL will be up in a few years with their television rights, and the world around television broadcasting is changing. We have in the EPL and NBA and places in other sports in America, we have the streamers as part of the television rights, and it's worth remembering that if that comes to bear and those streamers come to broadcast football here, Netflix is 100 times the size of Channel 9. And so if you take that into account, then how much gambling revenue do you actually need in the sport? And in terms of the advertisements not being sort of filtered after 8:30, that's when the sport is. So you're tying those ads to the sport. You're gamifying the game. And it's one of the last sort of great unifying languages we have in this country, and that's sport. And this one just does my head in, because it's like 80% of the people want change. There was a report done to it, into it, that recommended wholesale change. The government's kind of come halfway there. I just don't know why it doesn't go a little bit further. Yeah,
what do you think the answer to that is, Nikki? Because, I mean, it is clear when you ask people, do they see this as a problem? They're going to say yes. But obviously Anthony Albanese, he thinks problem gambling is an issue, but the gambling ads, he clearly doesn't
He has
feel
a
that
very strong, stubborn streak, right? We've all seen that in play. And when he stood up and said, it's either this or the status quo, well, that's wrong, because there obviously will have to be other changes made to make it tougher. And I thought Simon Kennedy's idea of an opt-in rather than opt-out is one measure that should be introduced. The other thing that they're trying to work on is a package that would, in effect, buy off free-to-air, that would make sure that their loss of revenue was somehow compensated by a levy on betting agencies. And I think it's fair enough to be conscious of the effect on free-to-air of this loss of revenue, because it's not so easy to make it up these days. And if they can be bought off in that way, then I think they should do it.
I hadn't heard this idea that you just mentioned there, a levy on the gambling companies, so they wouldn't be able to advertise as much, but the broadcasters of sport would get some sort of levy from the gambling companies. Is that
from the gambling companies? Well, it's not like the gambling companies are short of money, right? They make something like $55 billion worth of turnover every year. Yeah. So they're not going to miss a few $100 million off the...
But maybe if they're not advertising...
Mind you, if podcasters can't talk about wagering, what's going to happen to Carl Stefanovic? I'm worried.
Oh, that's a whole other topic.
Think of the podcasters.
Okay.
Think of the podcasters. But Anthony Albanese's stubborn streak that Nikki mentions there, Sam, I think that's true on this one. Yeah. I don't think he wants to budge on this.
I don't think
no, because
and I think he's betting on
religion. It's a religious issue.
And the NRL.
Yeah. And I think he's betting on Angus Taylor having to back this in, because he doesn't want to upset the TV networks either.
Too, which is why they've passed it off to a committee. But the leadership of the Liberal Party is very anxious about this and nervous about the blowback from free-to-air, but the majority of the party room wants there to be tougher rules, and I'm sure...
The majority the Liberal Party room?
The Liberal Party room, yes.
And I think that they will get slightly tougher, but not a lot tougher. But I also think Simon Kennedy's a bit of an outlier. I don't think he's talking for the front bench when he's...
He's not talking for the front bench, but they have had a lot of conversations with the backbench.
What about the Labor caucus? They've got national conference coming up where the rank and file will be there. And is this going to be an issue at the Labor conference as well? Will the members, the grassroots, want tougher action on this issue?
Well, there are people who are pushing certainly for tougher action on pokies, like Darcy Byrne.
At the state level, yeah.
Yeah, the Inner West Mayor, who is seen as a likely
replacement.
Likely. I think almost certain replacement for the seat of
even when in the
Grayndler.
next century he's ready to give up. So, yeah, look, I think there is outside growing momentum and a lot of pressure for tougher measures, and I think that's where it will have to go in the end.
Yeah, and look, just a final one on this. Daniel, the difference between the broadcast rules and the streaming rules.
Yes.
I mean, we do tend to watch now a lot of, whether it's the Football World Cup or the Tour or whatever it is, you're going to be watching it a lot of the time.
I mean, in many ways, the legislation's kind of outdated already, because we are increasingly watching our sport via streaming services. I was watching Richmond go down tragically to Carlton last night by 2 points via a streaming service. Not that I'm bitter about that, but...
I hope you didn't have any money on it anyway.
No, I've learned a long time ago not to put money on Richmond. We need to get with the real world. The crossbenchers want change. People in the Liberal Party want change. People in the Labor Party want change. People in the community want change. So surely the Prime Minister can give a little ground and strengthen these laws.
Let's see.
Yeah, well, the other thing also that Albanese and the government need to be careful of is that they don't become arrogant. I mean, they think they can just, dismiss the Liberal Party now because it's, basically disintegrating. But he has to look beyond that to what community expectations are, and he can't afford to look arrogant, I don't think.
Social media and the age limit, the government wants to toughen that up 6 or so months into the operation of this, Sam. Tougher penalties, doubling the penalties for the tech giants if they're not doing enough to make sure kids aren't accessing social media, and powers to compel information for the E-Safety Commissioner. But on this one, the coalition, I mean, Sarah Henderson did make it clear she doesn't think this is tough enough. So where's this one going, do you think?
Well, I think that I still think that there is an argument, and this doesn't go to some of the, the detail of that it's about a cultural change in terms of the way we think about social media. So I think some of the reforms that they're looking at are driven by, the legal advice and what needs to be done in that space to empower them. But I mean, I think that more broadly, we're going to see them do more on AI in the next couple of weeks and months as well, and that Anthony Albanese is starting to talk about that. But look, there will always be people that say, this is a failure because my 12-year-old is still on Instagram, right? But I think it's about a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I guess it's a longer-term play, isn't it? That sure, the kids who've had to leave social media are going to want to find a way back on there, a lot of them. But it's the younger ones who've never been on it that may not culturally feel they need to be on it. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've all become accustomed to sort of like, becoming borderline addicted to social media in some ways. Not you, David.
Definitely not me. Anyway.
What we're trying to do, or I think what the government's trying to do here is establish a new norm.
Yeah.
And this is the first time this has been done anywhere in the world. Britain is now following, and other countries are saying that they're following this as well. What I hope is that we are able to get together a coalition of the willing to tackle some of these social media giants. And this is maybe perhaps a first step towards that, because not only should we be protecting children and giving them a vibrant upbringing and a vibrant childhood away from the screen. Once they get to an age, and once we're all at an age to be involved in social media, we've got to do something about the toxicity of the whole thing and what it brings to national debates, our interactions with each other, the way we talk to each other. Maybe this is the thin end of the wedge in terms of perhaps building an international coalition that takes on the great social media giants of the world.
Yeah, it's hard out there for dopamine addicts, though.
It is.
I mean, I've completely gone off Twitter, but I find myself on TikTok a lot.
There's always something new. Nikki, at the end of the day, kids might not like it, but the government does think it's on popular, strong ground doing this world-leading move, don't they?
Definitely. And I really do think also that it's up to those who say the government isn't doing enough to come up with other solutions. What do they think will actually work better? And
well, I think Sarah Henderson on that reckons there are, quite technical things that could happen, different apps that can screen out some of the content that will get through to kids because they're going to find a way around this. So you need to get quite technical.
Yeah, well, let's hear them and let's see the opposition put them forward. My solution actually is to ban all adults from social media.
There we go.
Yes, I don't think
That's a very good idea.
I don't think they handle it appropriately.
I mean, I think also that $100 million Australian is not going to be much of a dent in the Metas of the world.
That's a good point.
Recorded a $60 billion profit last financial year.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do it like Donald Trump and tariffs.
Yeah,
we could just fix the
lots
deficit.
of lateral thinking today, Dave. It's very good.
Yeah, this is all welcome. Politically, though, is this another one where the coalition will have to back through what they're doing with the actual legislation that's on the table to double the penalties and so on? Can they vote against this, Sam?
I don't know. It's a bit hard if they're saying they need to go harder to not do anything at all. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. NAIDOC week as well begins today.
Yes,
what's happening this week?
50 years of NAIDOC week. The theme this year is 50 years of deadly. It's important to remember that NAIDOC actually stands for National Aboriginal and Islander Day of Observance. And so it's celebration, but its roots are in sort of observing what's happened to First Nations people across the country, the resistance that has instilled in pretty much every community and every individual throughout the decades and centuries now, that mean that Aboriginal people are still here. They're still proud. They are still pursuing the benefit of their own, of their various, I guess, justices and truths in all the different ways: land rights, health attainment, education. It's a day of celebration. I encourage people to go to Google or whatever your search engine is, and just Google in NAIDOC, and you'll see that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of events across the country run by Aboriginal people, but inviting the broader community to participate. Within our community, it's always thought that Reconciliation Week is for the corporates and the governments of the world, whereas NAIDOC Week is for us.
Interesting. I like that. I like that. We'll get on and have a look, check out what's happening this week. All right, our panel, Samantha Maiden, Daniel James, Nikki Sava, back very shortly with some final observations. Time now for Mike Bowers and Talking Pictures.
I'm Mike Bowers and I'm photographer at large for the New Daily. I'm talking pictures this morning with columnist for The Australian, the one and only Jack the Insider, and a very warm welcome.
Great to be here, Mike.
A tumultuous week in politics to end the winter session.
As usual, yes, always a fair bit going on.
They say that home is where the heart is, but housing is where it can get very difficult. And Brolman has Jim and Albo's political capital auction, and the bidding may have stalled.
Yes, but of course he's referring there to auction clearance rate.
How's our credibility?
Going. We're gone.
Yeah.
And they've gone.
Yeah.
Someone's on the camp chair, a couple of tinnies there as well. Good stuff.
Dean Alston has seen it that the big house here on the hill may be not worth as much.
I did notice a for sale sign out the front, Mike.
Fire clearance. There's a downturn in house values. This place is not worth $2 bob.
Will it recover?
Not in your political lifetime, mate. Mark Knight has worked out that the $5 tax cut won't buy the $6 coffee.
It used to be $5 to buy you a ham sandwich and a milkshake now.
The Albertino, of course, is frothy with a bitter aftertaste.
At least my $5 tax cut is good for something. Sorry.
The coffee's $6.
Yeah, you're not getting coffee for $5 these days.
Jack, there's no doubt the Liberal name's taken a bit of a battering, but Brett Lethbridge here seems to think that the rebranding will be the trick.
Yes.
The Glibberal Party.
The Glibberal Party?
We don't change a thing.
Yes, this was a Melissa McIntosh thought bubble, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Perhaps they all wear Groucho glasses and moustaches, and we go, oh, wow, who is that guy?
Of course, it's the branding that needs to change, and they've got Tony Abbott.
Malcolm, Scotty,
yeah,
and Angus, who hasn't got a cross through him.
No, not yet. Beautiful David Rowe, who has the anglerfish here of One Nation.
Watching everything.
They're very slow swimmers, aren't they?
I don't think they go all that quick.
They're definitely in the midnight zone, aren't they?
And they're right down the bottom.
Yeah, bottom feeders, for sure.
Tony is directing Angus towards there, and it looks like Angus might just need a breath.
Yeah, beautiful David Pope cartoon. Everyone loves a rebrand.
Yeah, they're looking for something soft during the European heatwave hydration break. Libs, teal-free, diet Fanta.
Yeah, it's Lib Zero. I'd drink that. Lovely Fiona Katauskas, who's always spot on. They want a rebrand that says we're for multiculturalism and we're against it.
And we're against it. Yeah, we believe in climate change and we don't.
Yeah.
We're looking to the future, but our party president is Tony Abbott.
Yeah, it's the Libs for all seasons.
Liberal Party. Just don't look under the bonnet.
It was our Liberal Party of discontent. John Spooner, who seems to have trust here in the Liberal brand as a bit of a fixer-upper. Going.
This solid as a rock dwelling is a great salvage opportunity. Head down, bum up sort of stuff. Yeah, bit of policy.
Dig a few drains.
That's right, you need to pump it.
This week, the Press Gallery Photography Awards were announced. There's two. There's The Shot, which went to Matt Roberts from the ABC for his his coverage of David Littleproud resignation.
Yeah, look at that face.
It's beautiful.
This just tells you how tough this game is.
And for camera work, Mick Seekers from AAP won for a beautiful little video titled The Last Harvest.
Well done him.
Congratulations to both Matt
Indeed.
and Mick. Jack, thanks for unpicking events this week. I'll let you do the honours.
Pleasure, Mike. And it's back to you, Spearsy.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Mike. And congrats to Matt Roberts, our ABC colleague, for that award. Mick Seekers as well. And also a shout out to James Massola from the Sydney Morning Herald, who picked up the Press Gallery Journalist of the Year. Time for some final observations. Quick one from me on Pacific diplomacy. The PM heads off today to Fiji. Tomorrow he's going to be signing a new security agreement there. He's been doing a lot of this. The government's been very focused on building security deals in the region to counter China. This one in Fiji, I'm told, is going to be almost as strong as an alliance, not quite, but stronger than some of the others, almost an alliance. Then he'll drop in at the Solomon Islands as well to progress another security agreement there. So a busy week ahead. Sam.
Look, over the years, Tasmania has made many outsized contributions to Australian cultural and political life, but none larger than the majestic Neil the seal.
There he is.
Look at him go. Look at him, the giant 1,000 kilogram sea beastie.
How does he do it?
He's so magnificent. There are cruel suggestions that he wasn't brought up well, he was abandoned by his mother, and hence he's now knocking over a lot of bollards. That's his favourite spot to sleep, outside one of the fences. He's a loud, proud, giant seal, and apparently he's only going to get bigger, and I think he is the best thing to come out of Tasmania since Joseph Lyons, Enid Lyons, Jackie Lambie, Brian Harradine. Look at him move.
He's amazing. What's not to love about it? I was waiting for the political link here between...
There is none. I just want to run pictures of the seal.
That's what I suspected. I love it. Thank you. Daniel.
I might change tack just slightly, David.
I'm going to beat that, right?
You're not going to beat my giant seal.
No, I'm not going to beat it. I can't compete. So, Sue Ann Hunter started in her role as Commissioner for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children and Young People on the 1st of July. Many people will be wanting her to come up with a series of recommendations and reports that are aimed at tackling the disadvantage that Aboriginal young people and children possess. But what we really need to do is just look at the plethora of reports and recommendations that sit on shelves right across this country in every jurisdiction and recommend what we already know. We don't need to rediscover some things like a child is best placed within their own community, within their own family, on their own land, in their own culture. So her role and her powers will allow her to go through and speak to commissioners at both the federal level and the state and territory level and actually try and bring some of these recommendations back to life after years and years of trying.
Well, that's the thing. We keep hearing when there are calls for royal commissions after, well, particularly the terrible issues in Alice Springs, we need to, there are already these recommendations. Will what she does, the work the Commissioner now does, will there be public reporting of...
There will be public reporting, but I think it'll be the conversation that she enables through her role to highlight these issues in real time for various communities and governments. And
talk to us in the media as well.
Exactly. Talk to you in the media, David, and just make people understand that this is a state and territory issue as much as anything else.
Okay. Nikki.
Yeah. There's a growing view inside the Labor Party that the next Victorian election would be a very good one to lose, partly because of the prospect of a Liberal One Nation coalition, and Labor thinks that would give people a glimpse of the future, especially as they start to disintegrate, which is entirely possible. And Labor believes that they could use the time to renew, regenerate and be back in a term.
I'm sure they'll never say publicly that they think this might be a good one for Labor to lose, but it is going to be an absolutely fascinating state election.
Well, and what if the Libs and One Nation are in coalition in Victoria?
Well, the question we were asking Dan Tehan today becomes very, very relevant.
Exactly.
Well, One Nation is now polling ahead of the Labor government in Victoria.
And well ahead of the Liberals.
And ahead of the Liberal Party.
All right, thank you all very much for that great show this morning. Finally, Canberrans, most unfairly, cop the bad rap for being bad drivers. Luckily, Anthony Albanese is a stickler for parliamentary process, and that includes parliamentary parking. We'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching.
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. No. Seriously, how hard is it? Keep going a foot further.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you.
You're making us all feel very excited about being here.